This podcast is brought to you by the Islamic Center and NYU. For more information, visit our website at www.icnyu.org.
Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you all. I'm really happy to be here with you guys. So we'll start with Bismillahi walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. So today's topic is Ramadan, how Ramadan speaks to our holistic wellness. So when we speak about holistic wellness, we can't really not talk about Islamic psychology. And I'll tell you why. Because when you think of the word holistic, you think of your entire being, right? And inherently, the psychology of Islam that's within our Quran and within our Sunnah, the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to our psychology, the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to our thoughts, the way we think, our emotions, our behaviors, right? It takes into account our entire being, right? Because our creator knows our psychology. Our creator knows our design. So if you think about looking at holistic wellness, how can we look at it in the absence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the absence of our creator? How can we look at and honor the health of our entire being if we do not take into account the creator of our entire being? Right. And so in our tradition, we have a saying, Man arafa nafsahu arafa rabbahu, right? Whoever knows himself knows his Lord. Because by knowing your design, by knowing how you were created, who you are, you can't help but think, who's the artist, right? Because we all are masterpieces, but we're created by the best of artists. And this is a name of Allah we know, is al-Musawwir, right? The fashioner, right? The best of fashioners. And so to look at Ramadan through a holistic lens, we have to understand that inherently Islam is a holistic faith. And it looks at the entire being and it doesn't negate any facet within us. So if you think about, like Imam al-Shafi'i, right? He says that you think you're just, basically like he says, you think you're just a body. You say that you're just a body, but inside of you is something greater than the universe. And so, when you look at like the sun, you look at the moon, right? We often say subhanallah, right? We say we glorify Allah. And yet we negate like this amazing world within us. And we don't take the time to understand it. And also, more importantly, see Allah as the creator of it, as the destination. So we have to begin with that. In order for us to look at Ramadan through a holistic lens, I need to get you to see yourself through a holistic lens. That you're not just the body, right? You're not just emotions. You're not just the mind. No, these are facets within you that make up who you are. And so when we look at Islamic psychology, we look at psychology through an Islamic lens. It's rooted in the monotheistic worldview of La ilaha illallah, right? There's no God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so it attributes everything to Allah's oneness. What does that mean? It means that we don't just look at the entire being. We don't just look at all the facets that make up who we are. No, we see them all through Allah and to Allah, right? Meaning that everything is a means to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what Tawheed is. It's when we say the oneness of Allah, it's not just, I believe in one God. No, it's that I see everything pointing to my creator. I have an emotional experience. What is Allah teaching me? I go through an external experience. What is Allah teaching me? What is Allah trying to guide me to? And so everything becomes like interconnected. And that's the beauty of Islam, is that we don't live in compartments, right? It's not like my physical health is over here, my emotional health is over here, my mental health is over here, my career is over here. A lot of us live like that. Right? Where like deen is like something over here, like my faith is over here, right? My relationship with Allah, it's over here, it's on the side. And then everything else is like, that's my life, dunya, and then, that's my deen, right? But no, actually the essence of Tawheed is that your career, your successes, your physical health, you working out at the gym, you eating healthy, you praying, you doing anything is all interconnected. And that's the reality of it, is that there's no facet that doesn't impact another, right? Like you're fasting in Ramadan right now and you're depriving your physical body. Does that not impact your mind and your heart and your emotions? Let's take it from the other end. When people go through emotional struggles, can that not sometimes seep into their physical health? Absolutely, right? So whether we acknowledge it or not, everything within us is interconnected. And so this is why my approach to mental health and why I got into the field of looking at psychology through an Islamic lens is because I saw this gap, right? Where people were like, my mental health is over here and then my spiritual health is over here, but they interact with each other all the time. You know, your mental health impacts the way you walk towards Allah, and your relationship with Allah impacts the way you take care of your mental health. So when we look at, you know, Islamic psychology rooted in this, like look at our psychology through this monotheistic lens, we look at three separate relationships that are interconnected. And this is something that Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah teaches us, right? And he, in his book, The Alchemy of Happiness, and he talks about how these relationships are not strange to one another, right? And there are no boundaries within them, and they move in the same direction, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these three relationships are what? Your relationship with Allah, your relationship with others, nature, the universe, things outside of you, and your relationship with yourself. Now, those three relationships, they're separate but interconnected. They impact one another. And so when we look at, you know, Ramadan as a means to our holistic wellness, it's not just about improving our relationship with Allah. It's about improving our relationship with ourselves and improving our relationship with others, right? Improving our connection to Allah, to others, to ourselves, and to our experiences that we go through. So one of the verses that I really want to connect you to is the verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us it's better for you to fast, that you fast, if you only knew. When you hear this phrase, if you only knew, what does that make you think of? What comes up for you when someone says, if you only knew?
There's a lot of like unknown reward that could be, but you don't like, there's just so much potential, I guess.
There's so much more than what you think you're getting, right? And so what if we connect to that when we approach Ramadan, that this month came exactly at the right time we needed it. That if only I knew that, like, you know, like if Allah had lifted the veils for me and showed me what this month came to offer me, I would be in awe. It would be so much more than just the physical benefits of fasting, the fact that it increased in my acts of worship. It would be holistic, right? It would be all encompassing. But how many of us approach Ramadan like that? That we welcome Ramadan as if it has exactly what we need in this given time in our life right now. That whatever you're going through, whether you're going through something emotionally, you know, in your personal relationships, whatever it is, it's Ramadan came at just the right time. It came with what, like Allah sent it to me to give me the means to what I need holistically, right? Because that's what Ramadan sets the platform for us to do. It's to transform holistically, right? And I want you to think about this. When it's 1 month out of the year, right? Where it's almost like this boot camp and you're engaging in routines every single day. That's transformative. You know, the transformative actions are the actions we do consistently, small but consistently, and on a day-to-day basis. Those are the things that transform us, right? And so if we can look at it as, okay, he's setting the platform for us. He's setting the atmosphere, he's setting the environment, he's setting our hearts, he's setting the direction of everything, right? Like everyone always says that I can do things in this month that I couldn't do all year. How many of you can relate to that? Yeah. Right? That things are naturally made easier for us to do. And this is out of his mercy, right? That we know this is the month of mercy, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends his mercy, like we can feel his mercy through so many things. The ability to fast, right? You know, yes, not even water, right? Like the ability to fast, the ability to work while fasting, not even having water, the ability to increase in these acts of worship that we maybe have not done to this extent all year or at all for a lot of people, right? Like that this is like, we're doing so much more. This is from Allah, right? And so he's showing you, what is he showing you essentially? It's the capability, the potential of you. Look what you can do. You know, when we read the verses in the Quran about the conversation between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the angels when he created Adam, remember the angels respond and say, like, they're shocked that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is gonna create a human being, right? And they're gonna say they're gonna spread, like, cause bloodshed, like, what, you know, basically, like, they're like, this person, this human being is gonna cause bloodshed on the earth, right? What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell them? I know what you do not know. And a lot of us miss this verse. That is Allah believing, like, is seeing your potential. That even he tells the angels themselves who are perfect, you don't know my you don't know my creation. You don't know what they're capable of. That's love, right? You know, when, like, a mother, you know, when, like, siblings fight, right? And one sibling goes to the mother and goes, oh, you know, he did this or he did this. And the mother's like calmer and she has, like, mercy, and the others, you're not gonna do anything about it, like, you're not, you know. And what is the mother essentially saying? I know my child, right? I know my child. Same thing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in this month, he shows you what you're capable of. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for us to improve ourselves, and he makes it easy for us to experience the peace of aligning our psycho-spiritual system. And this is a concept I teach in my work. I teach this, the heart over mind and ego approach. It's an approach I developed through an Islamic psychological lens to help people understand their inner design. And so I use the term psycho-spiritual system because, you know, when we study anything in the world, we study systems, right? Like, when we look at the ecosystem, right? That's the whole system. When we study the universe, right? We have the solar system. Even our physical anatomy that we give so much, like, you know, power to, we have our physical systems, the respiratory system, cardiovascular system, right? Digestive system. And we look at systems because system helps us understand not only the entities within a system, but the way that the entities need to function for that system to be in harmony. So one thing I recognized in my path was that, well, we have a psychological and spiritual system that's often negated. It has our heart, our mind, our emotions, you know, our nafs, something, part of us that we're taught about in our tradition, right? The part of us that seeks comfort, that seeks pleasure, that seeks just me, myself, and I, right? And what happens in Ramadan? We experience the alignment of the system. And I'll tell you why. In any system, right? In any system, if one area of a system becomes deficient, the other area has to step up. And I want you to think about this. Like, you know, if you know, like, people who are deaf, for example, they are known to have stronger sense of sight. And people who are blind, they are known to have a stronger sense of hearing. When one area in a system becomes weak, naturally, because of the equilibrium that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates, the balance, right? This looking at, again, ourselves through a holistic lens, right? Another part of the system comes up to save that system. So in Ramadan, we are depriving our bodies from food, right? But when you look at this within our psycho-spiritual system, what else are you depriving in Ramadan? You're depriving your nafs. You're saying no to your nafs. Not just from food, but no, like, no, you can't say that right now. It's going to break my fast. No, you can't do that right now because you're fasting, right? Like, you are taming your nafs to a higher degree. What happens when the nafs becomes weakened? And at the same time, you're using your mind in service of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in service of your heart. Okay, no, I can't listen to this because that's information I'm absorbing and that's not going to benefit my heart in Ramadan. No, I can't watch this right now. So I got to redirect because that's not going to benefit my heart in Ramadan. So this mind, instead of us making it the lead, we make the heart the lead. We use this to serve the most important part within us, which is the heart, right? And so already the alignment is happening. You're already utilizing these tools within you the way that they are meant to be utilized. What happens is that you deprive your nafs. The heart has no choice but to come up to the lead. Now you gave the heart back its rightful position because the nafs didn't get what it wants. You're using your mind the right way. right? And now the heart comes up and it experiences these beautiful things. It experiences connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, connection to yourself, connection to his word, connection to his truths. You're nourishing the heart the way it is meant to be nourished. How do you feel? What are some things that you would say you would describe what you feel in Ramadan? You guys could actually say words. Peace, right? What else? What is it? Energy, yeah. Good energy. Okay, good energy, yeah. Peace, good energy, right? Centered. It's a really good one. Centered. Alignment, which is what we're talking about, right? Like you feel a sense of alignment. You finally are giving your heart what it was designed to receive, what Allah created it for, which is to long for him. And this is what I really want to connect your heart to, is that your heart was programmed to long for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And through trial and error, you have given it other things and you find yourself in the same spot. And only when you suffice it with its creator can you do everything else in your life. And this is a truth that we really need to be connected to, is that we think like this heart care, right, is not a side job. It's not something that we do in Ramadan. It's actually what is necessary for you to achieve everything else to the optimal level. Because once this heart is centered and you're giving it the nourishment, because everything has its own form of nourishment. You need food for the body. You can't give the body anything else other than food, right? You can't. The heart has its nourishment. And that's God, his truths, all the goodness that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, connection, right? You give it anything other than something that is rooted in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you feel disconnected. You feel like you're not living to your potential. You feel like you're missing out. You feel like you are on cruise control. And this is something I hear so often in my line of work. I'm just going through the motions. People say that all the time now. I'm doing so much and I'm happy in my career. I'm doing this, but when I go to bed at night, I don't feel nourished. I don't feel at peace, right? It's because we're doing a lot not rooted in great intentions. When what we need to do is do lesser things, right? But like smaller things, but root them in great intentions. But this only can happen when the heart is awake, when the heart is nourished, when our entire being is aligned and centered around this most important part within us. It's not enough for us to gather information and let that information stay in our minds, which is what's happening a lot nowadays. I mean, in a few minutes on social media, you've gathered, oh, wow, all these nice quotes and all these nice posts, and you've read all these nice things, right? But what have we done with them? This is a sign that we prioritize this over this, that it is enough to know rather than to experience. I have knowledge of this. I have knowledge of that. Oh yeah, I know this and I know that. But that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. What matters is what you do with that knowledge. Did that knowledge awaken your heart? Did that knowledge move your limbs? Did that knowledge change the way you stand in front of Allah in prayer? Did that knowledge make you more present with your loved ones? Did that knowledge make you more present with yourself? Right? So we start with this. Our holistic wellness starts with us taking care of this heart and making this heart the most important part within us. So that when I'm absorbing stuff, I'm thinking about my heart. I'm thinking about, does this song, the lyrics here, does that really benefit my heart? Me listening to that, me following all these pages, does that benefit me? Does that benefit my heart? Does that awaken my heart? Does that make me more centered? Does that make me more peaceful? All right. So it's starting to ask ourselves questions. And so we want to reap the psychological and spiritual benefits of Ramadan to promote our holistic wellness this month. And one of the things that I want to encourage you to do is start asking yourself the right questions, because we can't change anything if we're always going outward. We can't change anything if we're always going to something external for us to feel good. This month is all about turning inward. This month is all about recognizing like how attached we were to things outside of us to feel good, to feel enough, to feel soothed, to feel nourished. And then all of a sudden you're depriving yourself of the first external need of a human being, which is what? Food, right? Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, he says food is the most basic of desires. If you can overcome this desire, you can overcome any other desire. It's true, right? We're programmed biologically to search for food because we need to survive, right? And here in Ramadan, you're told to deprive yourself from that very thing that you need to survive. you're like, you're like facing the fear, right? Because a lot, there's like they say like even your primitive brain, right? In psychology, they say your primitive brain has a fear of not having food, right? And the nafs hates this. The nafs is very uncomfortable. The nafs doesn't, you're not giving me food and water, you know, like, but then what happens in Ramadan? You're feeding other aspects of yourself, right? Have you ever felt like the hunger pains in Ramadan, and then you started reading Quran, or you started reflecting, or you started doing dhikr, or you started learning something, and then all of a sudden the hunger is not as much anymore, right? It's a real thing, because you nourish one aspect of yourself, the other aspect, the hunger diminishes. It's the same thing with the type of hunger that makes you attached to the wrong things. When you are satisfying that hunger with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the hunger for other things, the unhealthy attachments, the maybe like certain attachments to certain habits that you have been, whether it's people, whether it's shopping, whatever it is, like the destructive habits, right? That maybe people utilize to not face their own emotions, right? And I don't mean like people in shopping or destructive habits. I mean like when we utilize them as destructive habits, right? When we utilize them as a means to escape ourselves. When I need, I need this person, or I need, this to buy this thing so I can soothe myself right now, right? But what happens in Ramadan? Instead of looking to all those things that you think are there to make you feel enough, you look to Allah. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teach us in the Quran, right? Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakeel. Allah is sufficient for me. God is sufficient for me. And he's the best disposer of all our affairs. And a lot of times when we say this verse, we think of like Allah taking care of an external need. But can he be enough for your heart? Can you be sufficed in your heart by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And so this is the month where we start turning inward and assessing this most sacred part within us. We've been going outward for so long. We've been attaching to external things, whether it's our phones or shows or people or shopping, right? Like constantly feeding our nafs. If you really think about it, like we've become such a nafs-centered world. You do you, right? You got to feel good. That's the priority. No, because actually you don't elevate yourself that way. Right now, you're telling your nafs, no, I'm not going to give you what you want, but you're elevating yourself. You're elevating your soul. And so we start turning inward and we start saying, okay, well, the external things are not the answer. So we assess ourselves first spiritually. How am I doing spiritually? Do I feel nourished? Do I feel enough? Do I feel that Allah seeing me and Allah hearing me, is that enough for my heart? And what acts of worship do I need to improve? What are the acts of worship that I haven't been so present in? What are the acts of worship that I feel like I'm not really connected to? Maybe it's a matter of me understanding them better. Maybe I don't understand why I'm doing certain things, right? So maybe it's a matter of increasing my knowledge about why I pray or why I'm doing certain things. Maybe I've just been taught to do because it's the right thing to do, but I've never really connected to it on a personal level. Like, what's the why behind, my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And then what are some challenges I have with regards to my relationship with Allah? Is it that I don't trust him? Is it that I don't believe he loves me? Is it that, I've been making dua and he hasn't answered it, so now I don't have a fear of making dua? You have to turn inward. You have to assess your own heart and the blocks, right, that are keeping you from taking your relationship with Allah to the next level. And then psychologically, what are some mental and emotional challenges I'm facing, right? Is it a lot of negative thoughts? Is it difficulty coping with certain emotions or experiences? What am I attached to that does not serve my soul, right? What are some of the things that I need to slowly start to detach to? What are some of the unhealthy mental, emotional, even physical habits that I no longer wish to engage in? Like you still have, over half of, left in Ramadan. It's not too late to think about, what do I not want to leave Ramadan with? What habit do I want to leave and never take, basically the second half of Ramadan, I don't want to take it with me, so that I don't take it with me even after Ramadan. That's a question to ask, right? But you can only figure out those questions if you turn inward. And you start asking yourself these difficult questions, like what do I need? A lot of times we're so reactive that, we just feel agitated and we react, that we don't really take the time to understand that, no, there's a need here that I'm not fulfilling. And that's why I'm reacting this way. That's why I'm attaching to this and this and that, right? So part of it is understanding what is it that I'm needing right now, and figuring that out, because then the answers will come after. And then if you haven't done so, make your dua list, number one, and make it holistic, okay? Meaning, a lot of times when we make dua, we forget to make our dua all encompassing. Like one dua that I really always love to make is, oh Allah, please align me spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically with what is pleasing to you, right? So like you can incorporate your holistic needs in your dua. And a lot of times we forget to do that. We forget to ask Allah, help me react better. Help me be more mindful. Help me be more present with my own emotions. Help me have greater self-awareness that serves me and serves my path to you, right? You don't have to leave anything out. Nothing is too small or too big for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But just the act of, this is something I have my students do a lot, which is, just sit and write down du'as in every category. And the reason why I have them do that is because, to make a dua list that's all encompassing is because even the act of writing it down with pen and paper, not typing, because, even psychologically writing something down, pen and paper has a greater impact on your mind and your heart. So when you sit there and you write it down, you're really having a greater connection to what you need before you even take it to Allah. Because how many times do you start making dua to Allah about something, but you're not connected to you needing it. You're just used to it, right? Like you're just like kind of like on what is it? Cruise control, right? When you take the time to really write down the list, the du'as that you really hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers for you on a holistic level, and when I say holistic, I mean for your akhirah too, because you're a soul, and as Rumi says, my soul is from elsewhere and I plan on ending up there. So part of knowing that you're a holistic being is making sure you never forget you're a soul. Because at the end of the day, and I'll end with this, is that you're a spiritual being having a human experience, not the opposite. You're not a human being having a spiritual experience. You being a soul is the permanent part of you, is the part of you that transcends the body when you die, is the part of you that moves on to the next phase of its journey. Your humanness is the experience, and it's a temporary part. And I can't begin to tell you how even that understanding impacts us mentally. Because when you know that your human experience is not the most permanent part, you're going through it, right? It doesn't become the end. It doesn't become your destination. That's not where you live.
If you would like to listen to more, please donate to www.icnyu.org/donate. For more of our virtual programs, go to www.icnyu.org/classes. If you have any questions, email us at info@icnyu.org.